Welcome to Sophie's patch. I'm here in my orchard, which was the first part of the property that we started with. And one of the first things we did here, it was actually our housewarming, was to invite 50 of our mates to come round to celebrate us getting this property. But there was a catch. They had to bring a spade, a pair of gloves, some food to share, and something to drink. So what happened is, in an hour and a half, we managed to plant 100 fruit trees, and then we celebrated with a long lunch, and it was fantastic. Because this all happened in wintertime, and if you're going to establish deciduous fruit trees, wintertime is your best time because the trees are bare rooted and they're more economical to invest in. So of the fruit trees we've put in, I did be careful to make sure that I had cross-pollination for those that needed it covered. Now it's interesting, I had everything planned out. I had a plan where all the fruit trees were going to go. I had stakes in the ground where people had to dig the holes. And really it was an amazing way to get the orchard into the ground. The trees are actually planted in rows. Within the row, the trees are 3 metres apart. Now we position these rows 4 metres apart so that theoretically we could get a wheelbarrow or even a small ride-on mower with a trailer or something between them. Now one of the things we did to the site, because when we came here it was a bare paddock, is we actually ripped the ground going along the contours every 2 metres. So not only was there a rip where the fruit trees are planted, there was a rip in between. And the reason we did that was so that any rain that would fall, instead of running straight down the hillside, would actually soak into those rips and go into the soil properly. I'd love to tell you that everything was successful and all of those 100 fruit trees grow, but that wouldn't be the case. Some trees died because they didn't like our bore water. We've got salty bore water, and at the time it was 2,400 parts per million. We've since moved to a different bore and it's about 1,700 parts per million, but it's still quite high. Some fruit trees didn't like the fact that the ground here can get a bit wet in wintertime. And this area is actually called Mount Barker Springs, and in winter we can get springs appear. Now I've also got a grapevine arch here, and that's been fabulous. One of the things we planned from the beginning was that we would net as a big cage over the whole orchard. And I would recommend anyone that's putting in fruit trees that when you plant, you think how you're going to net to keep the birds off. For the first few years we didn't have the net constructed, and what I'd find is the sulphur-crested cockatoos would actually come in before the fruit had properly even formed. They'd come in before Christmas and strip everything off the trees, as well as prune the trees. It's a big commercial cage and it was a big investment. But I figured if I looked at how much fruits I had to buy for our large household of 7 people, that's a huge investment too. So I figured this would pay off over time. And this netting has been amazing. So for the last 2 years, we've been able to enjoy the fruits of our labour. Now you will hear quite a bit of bird noise in here. And I've got a couple of windbreaks around the orchard. One's on the inside, which is only a temporary windbreak. I will actually remove it over time. And there's a whole lot of sparrows that live in that inside windbreak. It's actually tree lucerne or tagasastes. So you can hear them chirping all around me. Now, to be honest, I don't mind the sparrows living inside. They get in under the gates and in small little gaps. They sound pretty. They eat the aphids and some of the pest insects. The only problem they cause is they can nibble on a few of my grapes. So I need a long-term solution to keep them out, but I'm not worried about that in the short term. Now, I started with a plan, not only of the fruits I wanted to grow and the space I had available, but I also had a plan to put a windbreak around the orchard, because we are a windy paddock, and if I didn't put a windbreak around, I'd actually struggle to get any fruit. So my long-term plan was to have a carob hedge, because I love carob. It's very long-lived. You know, it is called St. John's bread because St. John's meant to have survived on it in the desert, so it's as tough as old boots, and it can get 3 to 4 metres high. However, when it's young, it can be a bit slow to establish, and it can also be a bit susceptible to the frosts we get. So as a nurse hedge, I put tagasastes or tree lucerne. It was never meant to live in the long term. It was always something I planned to sacrifice, and I've started to remove it or at least cut it down in most areas. But what I found is neither the carob or the tree lucerne really took off. So I ended up with an old man saltbush hedge around the orchard on the outside. And that's proved to be remarkably hardy, and saltbush is also proven to harbour the highest number of beneficial insects. So it's like a beneficial insect insectary around the orchard.